Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to continue our discussion on MKULTRA. This is going to be on subprojects 54 and 62, what I like to call the perfect concussion. And I want to apologize in advance because today we have all kinds of excited goings on in our neighborhood. We have construction outside, we have people cutting trees, we have people getting their pool work done, we have leaf blowers competing with chainsaws. Now I see there's a cherry picker out here with a bucket truck, and so yeah, it's noisy, and short of not filming it all, if you could just ignore the noise, that would be just so wonderful, and I'm just so sorry about that. I also want to say, please, if you don't like to hear anything about people being harmed in any way or animals being harmed, and I will not go into dirty details, this might not be, MKULTRA might not be the videos for you, because this is where our government has done things that were unethical, immoral, illegal, and in my opinion, just horrific. I will gloss over the things that are really disgusting, but they are there, so if you are just kind of sensitive to that, maybe this isn't the video for you. Subproject 54 was cloaked in secrecy. It had to be. It began in October of 1954 and continued into December of 1955 in respect to the Navy. And you might be saying, wait, but you've been talking about the CIA this whole time. Yeah, and also I mentioned in other videos how a lot of times these agencies are holding hands on some of these covert and compartmentalized projects. And this is one of them. Subprojects 54 and 62, they tended to start off in the Office of the Navy. So the CIA claimed that this was an Office of Naval Research project, but done at the CIA's behest, probably because the Office of Navy had the ability to do it better than the CIA ever would. They had the equipment to do it, they had the people to do it, they had places to take people to do it, and it just would be easier for them to do. The Office of, that's my opinion, that part. The Office of Naval Research claimed that they were only developing protective headgear. So initially they tried to say, oh no, this isn't, no biggie guys, we were just developing protective headgear. There's nothing to see here, keep moving. Just like almost every single one of the MKULTRA sub-projects, we're left with very little information. We're left with truncated financial documents, and the experiments were shredded. The doctors on the experiments' notes were shredded. The test patients' data was shredded. If there was a film, they were shredded. If there were photographs, they were shredded. If there were doctor's reports, they were shredded. Everything was shredded. So what you'd have is they dug around through FOIA requests and things, and it came out that there were still some documentations in the financial records of one of the departments, and they were just literally bare bones. Didn't explain what the stuff was, but might have somebody's name on it, say like Dr. Geschickter or a psychiatrist or something. And so then they could call those people in these subcommittees, put them under oath, subpoena them, and force them to give testimony. Now, how accurate you want to believe their testimony is, that's up to you to believe, but a lot of times they admitted to it because they kind of had the documentation shoved up under their face or under their lawyer's face, and then so that's kind of the backstory on why it was so hard to get the information out about this, and why a lot of people still don't understand what these projects were about. So the Office of Naval Research initially claimed they were only developing this protective headgear. And on December 16th of 1955, what happened is what they had as Navy's project MK Decoy, it was simply shut down December 55 and transferred over into the CIA's MKULTRA's umbrella. And it was renamed Subproject 54, and then it was also, another part of it was Subproject 62. But they did what they always did. When things, in my opinion, got sticky, or the ethics became questioned, or you couldn't get somebody to do something, or something went wrong, or whatever the story was, if they wanted to keep the project going, they would switch it over to either another agency, another department. They would close the MK Decoy, slip it over to MKULTRA, rename it, and just keep it going. Subproject 54 involved, quote, The examination of techniques to cause brain concussions and amnesia by using weapons or sound waves to strike individuals without giving and without leaving clear physical marks. Please remember that. Anytime you hear of Americans going overseas and coming back with these strange concussions, please remember this. Please go back to it, and please remember the date. Please remember that this started in 54 at the very least. And think of how long ago that was, and how if you had the ability to do that then, that you couldn't have perfected it by now. You certainly could have the time to have perfected that technology by now. You've got these people that are being questioned, and Senator Schweiker is looking at the feeble financial records, and he said about this sub-project, quote, "The project description also discusses what it takes to induce concussion and how to sneak up on a person and induce a concussion." Note it said person. "And how to have that occur without the person being witting of it." According to a Department of Defense representative, again, this is 20 years later, Mrs. Diane C. Seymour, asked as to why the Navy was terminated on the CIA project, replied, so she's defending the Office of the Navy, and she says, quote, "The CIA's document says that this work would involve human experiments of a type not easily justifiable on medical or therapeutic grounds. They also noted that they would have to clear a number of Navy personnel, ... They didn't want to do that." End quote. So what that's telling me is, at this point, the Navy got wind of the true intentions of the CIA project. It wasn't just about protective headgear, because that would fall under an easily justifiable or medical ground. It would. It's protection. It's like body armor. But to try to purposely induce a concussion on someone in order to sneak up on them and have that person be unwitting of it is not anything that they wanted to justify. So they essentially handed it back to the CIA. At first, testimony was given that the project was, quote, "canceled and never carried out." That's what they tried to say until the financial documents came forth. However, it was later revealed via a CIA memo dated January 10th, 1956, that at least a year's worth of experiments were done through Navy funding. A solid year of Navy-funded experiments. Another memo said, when redacted, was clear and informed of our true interest of in this project, the whole scope of the project changed, and it became apparent that ... it was impossible to operate the program securely under the previous cover. So the Navy got wind of what Machiavellian experimentation was really underfoot, and they said, thanks, no thanks. I'm not trying to clear the Navy of any culpability. I'm just saying that that's seemingly what happened. Let's put a little flag by Dr. Geschickter again, because Dr. Geschickter got called out because his name probably ended up on one of these financial documents. So he was asked specifically about this sub-project, and he testified about it. Quote, "One was on studies on concussion in which they rocked the heads of animals back and forth to try and cause amnesia by concussion of the brain. And that was for $110,000. The other ... was the use of radar to put monkeys to sleep to see if they could be ... put them under with radar directed toward the monkey brain." That's what he would admit. They would happily admit to animal experimentation, by the way. And they would give you the reason, like, hey, we want to see if this could be done in humans. We only did it to animals. So they would rather easily admit to the animal experimentation. And I want to note that this experimentation, you'll find out, it worked to some extent. So MK Decoy is an experiment going on for a solid year under the Navy, and something happened that made them give it back to the CIA. The CIA takes it, puts it under Sub-Project 54 under the MKULTRA umbrella, and takes it back over. Again, what's in the file other than the testimony given 20 years later are financial documents. So you're going to see proposals, and they're usually on a yearly basis for funding. A proposal running from February 1st, 1956 to February 1st, 1957 revealed a, quote, request for financial support for research on the mechanism of brain concussion. It noted that the resonance cavitation theory, upon this research was based on redacted, had been submitted to the Chief of Naval Research dated March 27, 1954. Remember, we said October of 54. Now we're starting to see that the Navy was actually talking about, or were already doing it back in March of 54. So more stuff comes out and you can just start dialing the dates back. But I digress. In the proposal, the research facilities had been established and mentioned the specifics and dimensions of the main laboratory, the blast range, which was owned by the U.S. Army, and noted that 3 blast tests have been run to date. The details were quite chilling. Now, when you look at this, under subsection 10.1 of the proposal, the brain concussion was defined as, they defined brain concussion. Here it is, quote, an essentially transient state due to head injury, which is of instantaneous onset, manifests widespread symptoms of purely paralytic kind, does not as such comprise any evidence of structural cerebral injury, and I underline this part, and is always followed by amnesia for the actual moment of the accident. It's also underlined in the original. See, this is where, if you think about what's being written and what's in the file, that it tells you all you need to know. Because, see, animals cannot testify as to amnesia. Only humans can do that at this point in our existence. So that tells you right there that they were testing on humans. Just think a little bit, right? It's sad, it's horrible. Section 10.2 stated, quote, the implication of the underlying portion of the above statement is that if a technique were devised to induce brain concussion without giving either advance warning or causing external physical trauma, the person upon recovery would be unable to recall what had happened to him. Under these conditions, the same technique of producing the concussion would be reused many times without the disclosure of its nature. Again, do you think this was on animals? The implication of the underlying portion, always followed by amnesia for the actual moment of the accident, that was underlined, is that a technique was devised to induce brain concussion without giving either advance warning, so you don't tell them ahead of time, or causing external physical trauma. You're not going to have a burn on your head. That would be external physical trauma. The person, not animal, person upon recovery would be unable to recall what happened to him. Under these conditions, the same technique of producing the concussion could be reused many times without disclosure of its nature. Okay, that's a quote under section 10.2 of this memorandum. Oh, it keeps going. Shall I continue? I cherry-picked these for the most sensational of them. So under 10.6 of this memorandum, it stated, there's considerable evidence that resonance cavitation can be induced directly in the following ways. In other words, if we do this, it can cause this resonance cavitation, causing this concussion, and we can induce it via a blast wave propagated in the air, physical excitation with a mechanical horn or driver tuned to the resonant frequency of the head. They're talking about sonic weapons here. They're talking about sonic weapons. They're looking for a way to force amnesia on a subject without leaving a mark. The research in these sub-projects involved sound waves that had not been released. It was and maybe still classified top secret. The government knew. The CIA, the Navy, they knew this testing was both possibly dangerous and unethical. I have opinions about this. I think that if you were to somehow find out what happened in this sub-project. And in MK Decoy, if we had all the files with unshredded, I don't know what they did with MK Decoy, but if we had all the Navy's files under MK Decoy, and if we had sub-project 54 and 62 unshredded with all the people and all the doctors and all the projects and all the poor servicemen who were doing, what would you call it, blast tests for protective headgear, and found out that they were having sound waves aimed at their head and all kinds of other things that were damaging, I think there would be a big problem. And there's also the damage part of where you've hurt somebody and then you have the liability of making them whole again. And they weren't going to do that. They just were not going to do it. And I'd also like to just make a note for future reference that we, back in 1954 and on, had technology to aim at people's heads and to concuss them. And it was seen to be effective. And then you hear, 2 or 3 years ago that some of our folks went overseas and were staying in like an embassy or something of a foreign government and they were concussed. Hello, we had this technology allegedly for 70 years. Are you surprised? What I found very surprising was on the mainstream media, the pure shock and how quizzical they were about it, that how could this happen and what could it have been, and they just were as if they'd never heard of MKUltra, as if they'd never heard that we not only had some technology to do this, but we actually tested it, not just on animals, but on people. And there's actually documentations on the CREST website that you can pull up the file and see. Granted, it's a financial request, and granted, it doesn't tell you what Joe Schmo went through and how it hurt his brain after, but it's there. So why do you find it so hard to believe that other countries now have that technology when we had it 70 years ago? Subproject 62, it was conducted at the National Institute of Health, NIH, guys. What were we talking about these agencies holding hands? And it was done under Dr. Maitland Baldwin. I put this book under the bed at some point because I got so disgusted with what I was reading, and there's some things I just never got around to digging further. And I think Maitland Baldwin, looking into Subproject 2 and what was done at the National Institute of Health, I had just never gotten to it. So I'm sure there's a whole bunch of stuff yet to be discovered that I just didn't ever get to because there's so many projects here. But yeah, I just want to have it in the record that we know that we have the ability to sonically give people a concussion without them knowing it. And it would give them an amnesia at the point of impact. They wouldn't see it coming, they wouldn't know it happened, and it wouldn't leave a physical mark. And we had this back 70 years ago. So maybe some more FOIA requests should go forth into all the different agencies to see what they're willing to give out now. Again, these sub-projects were shredded, so they can give you financial documents. So I just want to say, I am not anti-government. I love being an American citizen. I just think that I believe in transparency. I believe that people should follow the law and be ethical and moral. And if you choose to undergo scientific testing for the benefit of our country and you want to sign a confidentiality agreement with one of our little alphabet agencies and go undergo tests for Ebola or whatever the heck you want to do, LSD, Ebola, whatever, SARS, whatever you want to do with your body, that you give consent and you're taken care of and that you get the proper medical treatment and that you're not contagious. And I just think that things should be done above board, and I think there should be more transparency between the citizens and the government. And that's my overall take of all of this. I also think that they currently do things that are unethical and immoral, and that it's our job to keep their feet to the fire and to do it through the proper agencies, to ask for the FOIA requests, do Freedom of Information Act requests when there's something you feel needs to be uncovered and shown, and make them account for the reason they won't give you some information if you feel like, that we should know. And I think that with the mainstream media going so off the rails on both sides lately, on all sides actually, I mean, it's left us as the normal human, the regular Jane and Joe Schmo of the world, to do the research ourselves. Don't let anybody tell you what to think. You do the research yourself and make informed opinions. You don't have to believe me. You can think I'm a nutter. I mean, I don't know why you would, because you could go look up on the CIA site and see what they admitted to. But what I'm saying is just do the research for yourself. And there's something empowering about doing the research for yourself, because sometimes you can connect dots that weren't connected before. And you can also, it's good for your brain. It's good for your brain to think for yourself. It's healthy. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this Perfect Concussion. And if you did, please push that like button and ring that subscribe bell. I hate trying to promote myself because it's just not my wheelhouse, but I would really appreciate it if you did give me a follow. And even more so, I would love comments. If you want to talk about anything, I would love it. If there are any conspiracy, like really honest conspiracy theories, not conspiracy facts, like these are conspiracy facts, but if you want to talk about conspiracy theories, grassy knoll type stuff, oh please, I love that stuff. And I was raised on it. Honestly, I was. I come by it naturally. I was raised on conspiracy theories, so it's in my blood to have someone go, but what really happened? And, go and look at documents and think. And so, I love that. I was raised on the Loch Ness Monster, and I was raised on the Abominable Snowman. And, some of them are quite funny, and some of them have proved out to be factual, some things. And I love that. So if there's anything you'd love me to look into, just leave a comment and let's talk. I just love feedback. So anyway, without further ado, I hope you have an excellent day. Bye.